Who are the countries that Russia dares not mess with? From the past when it split the world in two with the United States, to now when the West can't handle it by joining forces. Russia from ancient times is a war on the fight, someone to offend on the kill. Now Putin's leadership of Russia is even more grumpy, can do it without nagging. But there are these four countries in the world, even if it is a tough fighting nation, but also dare not say fight, one hand to master the national event. Today Zhao will tell you which countries Russia are afraid to mess with, may not wait for Zhao open mouth. Many people think of the first country is the United States. For Russia, the United States is now the world's first power, even if it does not exist. Dare not dare to provoke this saying. On the contrary to say, now the United States dare not hit Russia is more accurate. Otherwise, there will not be this conflict that lasts until now. The United States and Russia have been rivals for hundreds of years, from the Soviet Union period, the United States to screw the Soviet Union for the purpose. At the time, the Soviet Union at its peak was even more powerful than the United States. Many older Russians now have lived through the Soviet period, so the United States was not an unsurpassable rival in the eyes of the Soviet Union, but the United States was extremely resourceful. After the USSR scrambled for supremacy, the Soviet Union was still headed for disintegration, and the disintegrated Soviet Union was also quickly inherited by Russia, which likewise received the hatred of the United States. Although Russia's military strength is not as good as the Soviet Union, also not as good as the current United States, but Russia in the field of nuclear weapons is stronger than the United States. The number of nuclear bombs is also more than the United States. Like the United States, is the world's only two countries with air, land and sea Trinity nuclear strike capability. On this basis, Russia is not afraid of the United States is not surprising. Many people may say, Russia is only nuclear weapons to get out. But this point is enough, then Russia even the United States dare to provoke. There will be afraid to provoke the country. Bakhmut can be taken, but Russia has never been able to get Finland. The relationship between Finland and Russia can be described as a feud. Finland used to be a small ethnic group within Russia. In the 13th century, Sweden invaded Finland and ruled the country, and during the years under Swedish rule, the Finns had a very hard time. It was not until 1809 that Sweden was defeated by the Tsarist Russians and Sweden was taken over by the Tsarist Russians and the Grand Duchy of Finland was born. Even though the country was still in the hands of the Tsarist Russians, the Finns themselves held some of the power. Compared with Sweden, the Finns did not have to bad an impression of Tsarist Russia, and many of them were even very satisfied. The Tsarist Russia established the mechanism of the Grand Duchy, and it was during those years of Tsarist rule in Finland that the country's industry, machinery, and economy were developed to a great extent. But such harmonious days did not last long, and in the 19th century, the then Tsar wanted to impose total domination over Finland and began to de-Finishize the country. They were not even allowed to speak Finnish. They had to speak Russian, taking away the Finns' right to legislate, and they also made the Finns perform Russian military service. This meant that the independence of the Finnish army was also to be taken away. No doubt strongly opposed at the time by more than 50% of the common people of Finland, but the Tsarist Russians were still bent on having their way, and the Finns began to launch calls for independence everywhere. To the delight of the Finns, the Russians were overthrown in 1917 and the Soviet Union was established, thus giving Finland its independence. However, in 1939, the Soviet Union turned on Finland, and the Sino-Finnish War broke out. Stalin thought that he had won the war, but he never expected that the Finnish people's stubborn resistance would lead to heavy losses. And after the end of World War II, Finland became a neutral country. So far, Russia can no longer handle Finland. So besides Finland, is there any other country that Russia dares not mess with? As with China, even though many now speculate that China is next. But Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said something like this, that the pulse of development between Russia and China will not be affected overnight, and Russian President Vladimir Putin has described the relationship between the two countries in the same way. Sino-Russian relations have reached an unprecedented level in the past decades. Everyone should be able to see how much weight this sentence carries. To talk about the relationship between China and Russia, many people may think of the help that the Soviet Union gave to China in the past. The Soviet Union sent technicians, built factories, and provided funds to China, and it was because of this assistance from the Soviet Union that China avoided a lot of problems in its development. It was because of the Soviet Union's assistance that China was able to avoid many difficulties in its development. Although the relationship between the two countries later appeared cracks, but in the Russian period and back together. And maybe because China and Russia are both once suffered from the invasion of the country, the people of the two countries can especially be able to understand each other. So now the relationship between the two countries is so cordial, said to provoke to hurt feelings. In addition to China, another country that Russia does not dare to provoke is Israel. First of all, Israel is also well known as the world's fastest country. As long as the war occurs, Israel only needs a few minutes or a few hours to mobilize and then send troops. So Israel's military strength is very strong. In addition, Russia does not dare to provoke Israel. Another reason is that Israel has about 1 million Russians. Is the past when the collapse of the Soviet Union immigrants to the past, there are 1 million Russians in. Russia, no matter what, will not take action against Israel. What other countries do you know that Russia wouldn't dare to mess with? I'm Kiki and I'll show you the secrets behind each country. Feel free to comment, bombard me with private messages, and remember to subscribe to my channel. See you next time.